Welcome to Season 2 of the Color Success Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Stephanie J. Wong. The CalmOn app is a mental health app designed to assist children in identifying and managing their emotions. There are interactive stories, characters, and avatars that engage children in learning. Today, I interviewed 3 members of the team. Farrah Wong is a startup co-founder and lead designer of CalmOn. She majored in human biology and minored in cognitive science, which is where she discovered her interest and love for human-centered design. Andrew A.J. Lopez is a visual development artist. From a very young age, he loved creating and drawing, with attention to detail and passion. AJ has also painted murals and won awards, one of the moments that inspired him to pursue art as a career. Angela Luang is a startup co-founder and business developer of CalmOn. While working on the startup, Angela likes to podcast with her millennial Asian American friends over their social life experiences, current events, and mental health coping strategies. Fun fact, Angela can sing in 4 different languages, including English, Korean, Japanese, and Chinese. Well, today I have Angela, Farrah, and AJ on from the CalmOn app team. And I'm so excited to have you guys. And I was hoping that you can share a little bit about the app and the overall vision of it.
So overall, the CalmOn app is an app that we try to create where it creates engaging activities, teaching kids about their emotions. Like, what does it mean to feel happy? What does it mean to feel excited, scared, worried, sad, and angry? And we teach them that it's okay to feel these different emotions. And by teaching them these things, we create different activities like different breathing techniques, story times that they can go through, going on a picnic, for example, like going through each of the items that they want to do and then explaining to the parent or whoever they're with, like why they want to bring this item. It's a way where they can feel like they're in a controlled environment, being able to express their feelings whichever way they like. So for this application, we wanted to create something that was engaging and fun. So rather than making it feel like an assignment for them to do or like a therapist told you to do, it's something where the kid can, since it's like a little game, it's like, oh, I want to play it myself. So it's a way where they can improve on themselves because they want to improve on themselves, because they want to learn more about the different emotions, because there are little games, there are little like rewards that they can do, like changing their avatar, changing what the coach looks like, so they can play all these little games, learn about these different emotions, rather than having it feel like, oh, I don't want to do this because my parents told me to do it. I don't want to do it because my therapist told me I want to do it. I want to, but more of, I want to do it because it's fun. I want to learn more. So that was what we tried to do when creating this app.
So there's some parts of the app too, like where we kind of have the coaches ask the user, like, how are you feeling? And so it kind of goes through almost like a choose your own story, but it's like kind of routed that way. But it's like, where, okay, are you feeling sad or happy? And then from there, the coach kind of leads on to different strategies for them to go through. Not just for mental health, but also for fun as well. Like something to kind of either take your mind off something or take a break. So we were working some of those mechanics, especially around like summer. Like I think it was on August or July when we were working on. Yeah. So it was just really interesting just working with the different artists and designers, but also with experts as well, and kind of getting their input, how to make it as accurate as much as we can, like true to psychology.
We did do a lot of research beforehand before we do the stories and write out the stories. We find techniques that were very common for children, and we discovered that CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, is used a lot in metaphors and imagery. So these 3 things were our tools to create those stories for kids to learn about their emotions And also we try to create it like a game where it's kind of like choose your own adventure, where you choose certain decisions as the kid progresses throughout the story that they're playing. And it also teaches them about their emotions. So some decisions are more not as rational in terms of how they can be more mindful. So they would have choices like, oh, you can just stick with the emotion that you're feeling, or you can take alternative decisions that can help you lead to a more mindful kind of mindset about your emotions. So lots of metaphors like kicking a ball on the beach, or something like milk, milk, milk story.
Yeah.
So it's just using milk as the metaphor that is kind of like, oh, if you spilt milk and this happened, then you kind of like guide them through it, you know? And there's also like physical activities as well. So like we literally animated some push-ups and like sit-ups with using the original character, so it kind of gives them like a little guidance on how to do certain exercises and have fun with it. So I think that is a great way to the stories and the physical exercises and mindfulness breathing and other kind of exercises in there can definitely initiate that conversation with the parent and the child, like why they're doing these things.
And to add on to that, like, it's not just, oh, like the child chooses an emotion and then the coach gives them a strategy to help them overcome that uncomfortable emotion, but we have it where after the child lets the coach know about how they're feeling, then the coach is also explaining like a time where they felt that certain emotion. So for example, if the child said, oh, I'm feeling angry today, then the coach is like, oh, I had a time where I felt angry too. And then they explain that situation where they felt angry. So it lets the child know that, oh, I'm not alone. Other people are also feeling these different types of emotions. And it's okay to feel that way because it's normal. Other people feel that too.
Models empathy.
Mm.
But I'd love to see kind of your mock-up that Farrah was going to show us.
Yeah, for sure. Is it okay if I share like a little clip of
Sure.
little animation that we created?
That'd be great.
Yeah, so this is like a little intro animation that would happen before they start playing the app for first-time players. So here's this. You guys can see it, right?
Yep. Super cute.
Yeah, so that was like a little animation that we collaborated with the animators and composers. So we created that piece, and then for our little mock-ups, so we're not allowed to show everything, but I can just give you like a little sneak peek of what it kind of looks like. So here you can see that there's the introduction page, and then we were talking about daily check-ins. So this is where the child will be able to choose the different emotions and then also learn about them, like information about the different emotions. And then after they pick on an emotion, then here's the little coach that they can choose. These three coaches. So for this one, here's Sprite, and then she lets the user know that, oh, you're feeling this emotion. I was feeling that way too. And then they can also click on the different activities that we have. So we have a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique, calm, counting, milk, milk, milk story, box breathing, and going on an adventure. And here's our like little descriptions on the different activities, and then a little sneak peek on some of what the frames would look like when the user checks them out.
Is there a tracking of their mood over time, or per week, so they can kind of see where they're at?
Yeah. So there's also a calendar that the user can click on. It's not shown here, but it shows like the trends that they've been feeling, and we've also given them the ability to check in multiple times of the day, because when we were talking with our advisors, they were saying like, oh yeah, sometimes children, they don't feel one emotion for the entire day, so you should try to incorporate where the user is able to check in multiple times a day, so they can see like, oh, the overall trends of what the child is feeling. And also we can not only see it by the days, but also a month, so like a month chart of like all the different emotions that they've been going through. This idea all started because we won a hackathon. It was like a 2-week sprint. We had about like 10 people working on it day and night, since it was a hackathon. And then after we placed second, that really motivated us to keep going. And then we're like, how about we also be incorporated as a company? And after that, like fast forward, now we're like an incorporated company with 30 plus volunteers. Everybody is just a volunteer on our team, which is so amazing that everybody believes that this is something that we need to work on. This is something that should be available to kids, very accessible. So,
and I don't know if you guys watch the K-drama Startup, but it reminds me of that. Like, oh, we're gonna hackathon and then like get to, become this like huge app and stuff like that. But I mean, obviously the thought behind it, the intention is just, amazing. And I guess I'm wondering, from AJ and Angela's perspective, what do you think the app can kind of contribute to the space of children's mental health?
I think it creates sort of like almost like a companion, where, because not everybody, especially during these times with quarantine, some people start to feel kind of lonely or feel like they need someone to talk to, and not everybody has somebody to talk to. And I feel like this kind of gives it a more like an opportunity for kids to like interact, not just in a video game type of aspect, but also something that can help them like with mental health and kind of aim to better themselves, and not just mentally, but physically and spiritually. And that's what we aim to do with these characters that are in the app.
I think AJ pretty much had a really amazing world building, just being able to combine his world of like in a children's mind of what is fascinating and beautiful, that innocence of, children's cartoons, and combining that world with mental health education is what AJ pretty much did. And he made the app into reality. And really, when I started wanting to make this app, it was a very ambitious one, to a point that I thought it was a dream that was like a lot bigger than my own skill set by my own. And I saw that, if we can combine gaming with animations and illustrations, we can create a very interactive tool that can teach children very effectively about mental health education. Because, growing up, as I talked, to Farrah at the beginning, we both agreed that, mental health was something that we never really learned about until like our 20s or, in college. And in my personal experiences, I felt like public education didn't really teach mental health either at an earlier age, especially in kindergarten through elementary school and middle school. So I'm hoping that eventually this app can transform public education throughout the schools in the US and even more, and even to hospitals, maybe even to therapy practicing, and just really big vision that it can impact a lot of families and children at the end of it.
That's what a vision is, right? And you'll be happy to know that in my third graders class, they're learning about meditation, mindfulness, and growth mindset.
Yay!
So I think we're headed in the right direction. I was like, dang, this is awesome. And so she was like, let's go rainbow breathe. I was like, okay. So, but it's funny because basically, AJ, you created this world, and I'm thinking, wow, AJ has a child's mind. But how did you get in this space where now as an adult, you're putting yourself in this imaginary or world or perspective? Like how did you channel that?
Well, some of them were channeled by past personal experiences and even some experiences that I still have to go through today, even as a full adult. Like, for example, like when I was a kid, kind of feeling like lost, and I was very introverted, but getting to how I grew from how I am right now, it took a lot of steps, and just, sometimes meeting people at the right time, it just happens, and they start to inspire you, something that you can contribute to this world. Not only like it helps you, but also helps other people too. When we came to this app, it's like something that, this can also even reflect back to us too. It can help any age. So it's various mixes of something that you can relate to, that you can still tie even as a full adult, but also you kind of look back to when you were a kid and try to fill those gaps of what you were possibly missing at the time.
So tell me a little bit more about maybe the games or ways that children can see themselves reflected in it. I mean, what's amazing to me is on the screen right now, we're so diverse. And I think we really need that cultural sensitivity or attention to diversity so that children can see themselves reflected. How have you guys been able to incorporate some of those aspects into the app?
So funny that you were talking about that, because now like we're working towards a MVP, which is the minimum viable product of our application. So I'm the lead designer of the application. So me and the designers were talking about how can we include diversity into our app. So we were thinking about this like ever since the idea stage of the app. And we were thinking, how about we include people with physical disabilities or people with different mental disabilities so they can feel more included. I noticed, and I guess we have all noticed, that a lot of apps, they show more able-bodied people. So in our app, we have these little coach fairies, and we were thinking about including different disabilities into them. So that way I feel it's a way to accept more children, and more children get to learn about how they're different from other children, which is, I think, is a really cool idea that we came up with.
And on top of that, we were more inspired to add in more diversity as we started testing out our app to children of different learning backgrounds and different races. And ever since, like Farrah said, it was at the very beginning of the idea stage, we've already incorporated the 3 fairy coaches with certain skin colors that are from light to a little bit more tanner. So, and on top of that, we were also considering the gender on our user avatar. But that will be maybe like after the MVP stage where we can, add more features in there.
I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of what I was going to ask next, which was the avatars, because kids love avatars. And I'm just like, with the hats and all those things, I'm like, I don't pay money for games. So when I play Pokemon, I'm like, well, I'm just going to go with the freebies, which I don't necessarily like, but when kids have the ability to change their avatar and make it more customizable to them, like that, they really like that. In fact, the kids class picture this year was their avatar. They like put them all together. So I think right now with, the pandemic and with Zoom and everything, that's kind of where it's at right now. But AJ, you talked a little bit about things that you may have struggled with as a child and as well as in adulthood. Can you guys speak to maybe some of the challenges that you faced as children and how this app could have helped you back in the day?
Well, for me, and I've been going through this since I was a child, but I didn't even learn about it till I got to college when I took a health class. But I found out when I was in health class in college that I had ADD. And it was like where, especially with parents, they didn't really quite understand what it was. It was gone throughout my childhood. And it's like where, if you mess up or do something, you get some negative reaction to it. They just keep saying, you're too slow, or they think you're
not focusing.
Like you're just in a different entire world. As I grew up, it just becomes harder, especially as an adult. But after I took that class, took the steps to like learn more about it and get accommodations through college, I guess in a way, it kind of reflects back into the app too, because it's like where you're accommodating children, and in this type of day and age where it's really distracting, and sometimes there's like an activity in there that will help you just kind of reboot or restart and get you to restart your body again. In every part of the project that I've worked on, I think there's like a little touch of stuff that I went through that's kind of like embedded in the DNA of those activities.
So for me, I really wanted to work on this project because growing up in like an Asian household, mental health was really not talked about. I didn't know anything about it. Like when I would cry, my mom would be like, "Stop crying." Or like when I'm angry, my mom would be like, "Stop being angry. That's not good. Don't be angry." And then like because of that, I like suppressed a lot of my emotions. I didn't really like talking about my emotions, even to my friends. Like it would only be to that point where like I'm truly breaking down is when I would reach out to them.
Mm-hmm.
Back in college, like I was put under so much stress, like taking all these exams, making sure like my mom was proud of me, like, oh, because I passed all of these exams, she'd be like, okay, good job, right? But then like during those classes, I really didn't do well. And then I remember for one of my final exams, I just sat there and my mind just went blank. I didn't know what I was experiencing. And then I failed that exam. And then after that, I Googled it and I was like searching up what is an anxiety attack or something, like listing the symptoms that I had. Like I totally was like, why is my heart racing and things like that. And that was when I realized that during that time it's because I had an anxiety attack and I was just under so much stress. I didn't even know what I was experiencing. So that's why I'm like so passionate to work on this project, is because I want to educate kids at a young age so they wouldn't be afraid to talk about their emotions and they would understand what they're going through, unlike me, like jumping into this, going through college and feeling all these different emotions, didn't even know what I was experiencing.
Yeah, I think what you guys are speaking to is there's a psychoeducational piece to it, but also you're bringing these experiences that from your childhood that you're able to address, because anxiety is pervasive. And right now, especially with pandemic, I tell a lot of my clients, like there's an overarching depression and anxiety, especially all I call it, there's two pandemics. There's the, COVID-19 and there's a socio-political pandemic. And I think that's creating a lot of aspects. But what you're also talking about is that cultural piece, right? Of how our parents respond. And unfortunately, they might not have the training or understanding. I mean, you can clearly tell my kids are kids of psychologists because they'll be like, I am sad. And like, being able to cope with that. But that's not the general response that kids may be able to articulate versus, like you were saying, you suppress it. And especially with AJ, when people misinterpret that as you're not focusing or trying hard enough, that can really impact self-esteem and just have a lot of self-doubt. And it is a lonely process when you feel like you can't really talk to people. So I appreciate you being vulnerable on this interview, because it is hard sometimes to share those aspects of your experience. So Angela, I know that you have something to share because you've alluded to it. Could you kind of give your experience or insight into your childhood or process and how that's played into or contributed to app development?
The overall culture of the Asian community is that we don't really talk about emotions. It's going to be assessed as weakness. And I remember the constant teaching and idea that we cannot look weak to people. We always have to have a really high image of ourselves when we're in public with our families and relatives, in restaurants, in like gatherings. We always have to look tip top, almost perfect, and looking like we have everything together. And that kind of applies to most Asian people growing up under that pressure of wanting to look perfect for their families, wanting to achieve certain things for their families. And so, I think Farrah, she kind of went through a lot of it and internalized a lot of it, and I could kind of relate to it as well. And I feel like especially at a younger age, when I was around the kids of elementary school, I had one of the hardest times because I remember I was being bullied at school. Kids, they don't really think about relationships and their consequences and their interactions with other people. And so, I definitely felt like I didn't know how to process like many of the extreme events that I went through in elementary school and high school, even up to high school. And, it's just the combination of your family pressure, the society's expectations, things that you deal with on your personal life, and also just like your interactions with your friends in school and other things. They also contribute into my mental health, especially at that age. But I didn't have the resources. I didn't know or have any role model to talk to about these things. I was the oldest in my family, and I was like the first generation, college student, and so in the family. And so it was really hard to talk about these things because it was never really normalized in our family to talk about feelings. Just more like, oh, what have you been doing? What have you been doing in school? That's more of like the common question that you'll get in the household. And so it was really hard for me to express that to my family about what I was truly going through. Sometimes I would tell it to my friends. They would relate it to it more. But I never thought about using professional help when I was like in huge, extreme dire need of mental health resources and things like that. And I felt like making this tool can eventually help kids learn. And even if they don't have the resources, even if they don't have the finances, maybe this can be a guidance, like a message to advocate them towards that route of finding role models or professional resources that can teach them what mental health is. And the more kids that we talk about in our targeted age group, which is from 6 to 11, we realize just how little they know about mental health.
I mean, thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm so sorry, bullying is so pervasive too. And Kids can be mean.
Yeah, they're so mean.
They can be very mean. And then now with social media and like everyone being on the computer, it kind of gives this anonymity, so to speak, behind people saying mean things. Not to say that adults aren't mean or can't be mean, but I think that's really difficult because children don't have those same coping skills per se of like brushing it off and thinking, oh, this person's opinion doesn't really matter in my overall life. But what you're also talking about for all of you guys is that family does influence the way that people seek help and also the way that children cope. And a lot of times, if I do see families, I don't work with many currently, I did in the past, but when they do bring in somebody, whether it's at the childhood age or the adult child age, there tends to be a family dynamic. There's an identified patient, but really there's family dynamics that really play into that. How can we get parents to buy into it a little bit more, especially Asian American parents? Because and I think one of the things that I think about is doing the backdoor approach, which is, yes, if it is a part of homework or it is a part of school curriculum, then yes, we will download the app. But how can we get minority parents to think a little bit more? And if the kid comes up to them and says, hey, I want to download this app, my friend has it, that they'll be like, oh yeah, okay, this makes sense to like work with stories on emotions. Or rather, yeah, sure, you could play it.
I think one way that I notice is that it also helps kids with being more open for communication. So it can teach them more, especially for people who are like shy, like me as a kid. It kind of encourages them. And another thing too is that it really explores different ways of social interactions and also educates even just like the basics for psychology that maybe parents can really see an educational source from it. And that's some of the things I noticed.
If we have more Asian people use the app, then their parents would feel like, oh, I see another Asian person using the app. I think this is a good app to use. So I think that is one way of having them being more comfortable with it, because I see they like to follow people's lead. If they see I noticed for me and my family, if they see another family do the same thing, they would want to like copy that. I don't know why, it's like a thing that people like to do. So that is one way I was thinking of showing that all like, oh, they like this app, so maybe we can try it too.
It's like Hooked on, I don't know if you remember Hooked on Phonics.
Yes.
Back in the day. It's like, I think that's what got my mom to just like, oh, I'm seeing that parent on that commercial. I'm just gonna, something psychology in there. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
I see, I do,
Well, hopefully most people want to do the best by their kids. And by giving them exposure to the tools that can help them, that would really kind of convince them, so to speak, or encourage them to do that. And I think, Farrah, you have a really good point, is that when we have maybe Asian Americans on the screen showing that, they're using it, or having different therapists of different ethnicities kind of encouraging people to use it, that could be really helpful for buy-in. What about you, Angela? What are your thoughts?
As I've been working more and more with, the people who have joined our team ever since, it really made me much more confident that it has to be put out there. And we've sacrificed so much mental health, so much sleepless nights, and so many other, personal life things aside to make this app happen. And, I've also, just the fact that we've been talking to a lot of children and families, that also motivated us as well. Just everything that came along, like kind of like the domino effect of us after building the app for the first 2 weeks, just made us realize like this has to be put out there, that it is going to affect a lot of people, and it's going to be more positive, a very positive impact to maybe the future of like our mental health education and the public school system in kids. That's just the big vision in the future.
Yeah, that accessibility is just so important. And with apps, like mostly every kid has to have some kind of smart device. Unfortunately, there's still that digital divide. And so hopefully we can get even more access to the equipment needed to download the app. Well, thank you guys so much for being on the show. And this is exactly the kinds of things that really resonate. And AJ for linking us all up, because obviously this podcast is all about sharing and destigmatizing mental health and making it more human. And this is the first time that we've had more than two people on a call, as well as being able to really give attention to children and how important it is to start early so that we can work more on prevention of mental health issues and also humanize it, right? Like kids go through some really difficult things, and growing up, and even now, it's like I'm in my 30s and I'm still trying to figure out constantly how I'm evolving. And trust me, for those who aren't in their 30s yet, like the 30s are a lot better than the 20s. So look forward to that. And, you know, I think as we can get more and more people learning about these resources, learning about these stories, the better off that we'll be in terms of having these discussions. So, I mean, I just applaud everyone on working so hard on this and to keep going, because it is such an important vision. And you guys have a product, like it's cute, it's gorgeous. Like I was engaged. I love cute things. I surround myself with cute things all the time. I think I'm rivaling my youngest for like having stuffed animals, like BTS, BT21 dolls and stuff. So yeah, exactly. Big army here. So I think that it's just awesome that you guys are pouring your heart and soul into this. And I mean, I completely support you in it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for listening to the Color Success Podcast. Listen, like, subscribe on all major streaming platforms, YouTube, IG, and if you want exclusive content, you can join our Patreon. All links can be found at colorofsuccesspodcast.com.